So one of the things I've been thinking about lately is how do I continue to grow, but also diversify my real estate portfolio? If you guys have been watching my videos, you know all my holdings today are in Boston, which, I'm very high about. But as I've continued to expand, I've been doing more and more thinking about how to build a more structured and diversified portfolio that has exposure to numerous markets across the US. So what I thought I would do in this video is talk to you guys about how I'm thinking about my diversification strategy and how I'm gonna go about it. So whether you're an active investor or a passive investor and you're looking to diversify your portfolio, you're gonna wanna check this video out. What's going on, guys? My name is Lior and welcome back to my channel. Now, before I get into the meat and potatoes of the video, two super quick things, guys. Number one, if this is your first time on my channel, first of all, welcome. Second of all, make sure you smash that subscribe button. Putting out content every single week here on this channel, talking all about multifamily investing, from financing, acquisitions, construction, raising money, and literally everything in between. So if you're interested in those kind of topics, make sure you subscribe. So with that, let's get into the meat and potatoes. And as I said in the intro, right, one of the things that's been on the top of my mind, is how do I get better diversification within my own real estate portfolio? I've been investing in Boston for 6 years now. All my holdings are all in Boston. And let me start by saying that, first of all, I love it, right? I mean, I've done well, the properties have done well. I'm a huge believer in the Boston market. But at the same time, I do want exposure to other markets, right? I think there are a number of other markets in the US that have good long-term growth potential. And I want my portfolio to kind of benefit and ride those other waves besides just the Boston wave that I'm currently riding. Some of the markets that have really been top of mind for me have been markets in the South and the Southeast. Those have been really popular markets over the last couple of years, especially since COVID, right? When we had a lot of migration from the North to the South, a lot of people started moving there. But even kind of in the post-COVID world, those markets have still continued to do well. People are still continuing to move there. And there's just a lot of infrastructure and growth development that I see happening that, again, I know a lot of the real estate is going to take advantage of. So that's kind of where I'm generally pointing at, and that's kind of where my mind's at. Now, before I break down some of the markets that I'm actually thinking about, let me say this, right? I do think that, for me at least, I think Boston is going to stay a core part of my portfolio. I view Boston as a very durable, long-term market for my investments, right? I just don't see a lot of risk coming in Boston, right? Because it's just so economically diverse. It's so stable. It's so in demand. There's people moving here all the time. I mean, there's the universities, there's the biotech, pharma, there's finance, fintech. There's literally everything in Boston. So I am still very much high on Boston over the long term. But here's some markets that I'm thinking about personally that I think could have some good growth prospects over the next years. And again, this is where I've been doing my diligence on, and I thought I would share with you guys as I continue to expand. So some of the markets that I'm thinking about, first of all, are major cities in Texas, right? Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio. Those are the markets that I've kind of had in mind in Texas. Obviously, those markets have gone through tremendous growth over the last, 3, 4, 5+ years. They've really blown up, particularly markets like Dallas and Austin. I know they've become quite pricey, and cap rates on multifamilies there are pretty low. But, they do have good fundamentals, right? People are moving there. It's warmer weather than a lot of the rest of the US. There's good employment growth, good job growth, population growth, obviously, as I said, and it's become a more desirable place to live. Given that, I do think over the long term, that's probably going to be a continued trend. I think especially those major cities, right? The Dallas, the Austins, San Antonios of the world. I do think those are going to continue to trend along nicely over the foreseeable future. So I do want my portfolio to gain from that exposure. The second kind of area I've been looking at for my portfolio has been the Carolinas, and in particularly North Carolina. North Carolina, there's a couple of cities there like Charlotte and Raleigh that have really stood out to me. Great population growth, great employment growth. They've got very solid industries. Banking, of course, is huge in Charlotte. That's one of the many. Raleigh actually reminds me a lot of like Boston. It's got the research triangle there, right? So it's got some big universities. It's got some biotech, tech companies moving in. So that certainly caught my attention, and I'm I'm starting to sift through deals and opportunities over there. And then the last kind of pocket I'm looking at is Florida. Now, Florida, I'm always kind of been a little back and forth on, just because I've always seen it as a little bit more of a volatile market that's a little bit too heavily dependent on tourism for my taste. Now, there's obviously different pockets. I mean, Miami's obviously been booming. Tampa was on a huge tear over the last number of years. So there's the major cities there certainly have other, have the industries and the population growth to sustain it. I'm still not 100% sold. I think there's a little bit of a bigger supply risk over there, right? Because developers can go in and put just massive complexes without too many issues, right? Whereas you compare to a city like Boston, right, where it's just so hard to develop, and the supply risk is much lower. So those are some of the factors I'm considering with Florida. But those major cities, like I said, Tampa, Miami, certainly are on my radar, as I do think they have good growth prospects over the next number of years. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about, where to take my portfolio to the next step. I'm evaluating different opportunities in all these different markets. And in terms of actual execution, here's the thing, that I think is really important, especially for you guys, whether you're an active or passive investor, right? I think getting exposure to these markets, a lot of people think, well, all right, well, I have to go buy property in that market. Now, you can certainly do that, but I think where a lot of people potentially err, right? I mean, there's obviously people doing well on this, but I think where some people overstretch a little bit is they start buying a lot of property in different markets, and real estate is just so hyper local. And it's taken me years to really master the Boston market, right? So for me, I'm thinking about it. It's hard for me to say, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go to this new market and start dominating there tomorrow, right? So rather than approaching with a mindset of I'm gonna go buy, I'm also considering quite a bit in these markets, partnership opportunities, right? I'm connecting with investors that have been operating those markets, that know those markets in and out, like I know Boston, that already have the contacts and the networks, that know exactly what they're looking for. They'll know which apartments are good, what layouts can command what kind of rents, everything that I know in Boston, just in different markets. So that's how I'm thinking about it, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be directly by yourself. You don't necessarily have to go buy like a 4, 8, 10 unit in one of these markets. There are opportunities to potentially partner with experienced people, so that just keep that in the back of your head, right? Because that is something that I've been bouncing in my head as well. And I'm very much leaning kind of on that latter partnership side, dealing with people that have experience rather than trying to learn every single market from scratch. So those are kind of my thoughts about how I am planning on progressing down this expansion path. Of course, guys, if you have any questions, if you have thoughts, if you think I'm crazy and I'm just wrong, or if you agree with me, shoot your comments in the comments below, and I will definitely help you out.